All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Henry Schein Dental Academy webinar series. My name is Adam, and I'll be your moderator. Tonight, we're joined by Renee Susami and Mike Stanislawski. Renee is a senior designer with Henry Schein's Integrated Design Studio, and Mike is one of our talented equipment specialists. If there are any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section of your control panel, and we'll answer them at the end. And Henry Schein is not offering CE credit for viewing or attending this presentation live or on demand. Renee and Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Adam. And thank you everyone for joining Mike and I this evening. Our topic is ready for a refresh, what to consider when remodeling, expanding, or moving your practice. Adam already gave that great introduction, but again, I am Renee Susami, a senior designer with Henry Schein Integrated Design Studio. I have been with Henry Schein for what will be 8 years coming this January. And previously, before joining the Integrated Design Studio team, I worked in commercial furniture design, senior living design, as well as residential. Mike?
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you, Renee. My name is Mike Stanislawski, guys, and I'm so grateful to be here tonight. It's a pleasure to be with everybody on the call. I am an equipment specialist for Henry Schein, and I do work in the Colorado market, and I have been doing this for 23 years. So I do have a few tips and tricks that some folks out there might find helpful. And so, again, just grateful and passionate to be here. I can't wait to share some of this with you, and hopefully we get some great questions and you guys enjoy the content.
Awesome, thanks. So before we really dive into our topic tonight, just wanted to give a brief introduction to the Henry Schein Integrated Design Studio team. If you can't tell by my accent, we are out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we have a team of 20 wonderful designers specializing in dental office design. We work in coordination with our Henry Schein equipment specialists like Mike nationwide, and we offer an array of service offerings from dental space planning, 3D visualization, equipment and technology specifications, as well as interior design services. So our overall intent tonight for our webinar is to really dive into the various considerations one needs to take before deciding to move their practice, remodel their existing space, or expand and take on additional square footage. We will also be reviewing a couple case studies that Integrated Design Studio has worked on and discuss how these two spaces plan for a remodel and also an expansion. We're also going to review some interior design recommendations that you can implement into your remodel or your expansion. And lastly, we will wrap it up with tying in our external project partners. So our presentation webinar tonight is really broken down into 4 categories. We will be discussing the need. So what is your need when you start thinking about needing more space or taking on an associate? We'll also be discussing some of the considerations you need to think about when undergoing a remodel or expansion. We're going to discuss some solutions by reviewing a couple case studies and also looking at some interior design elements you can incorporate into your space. And then finally, how do you execute it? How do you make this all come about? So Mike is going to take it over and discuss need.
Yeah, well, thanks, Renee. I appreciate all that. And so folks out here on the webinar, it's a big decision to figure out if you're going to do any of these things. Are you going to expand your practice? Are you going to move it? Are you going to remodel it? And really, it's more than a need, it's a why. What's got you thinking this way? And really, we've talked, and I've talked to a million clients in my career about these types of situations. And there's a lot of reasons to consider a remodel, a refresh, an expansion, or a move, but they all break down usually into a couple categories. And really for me, one of the most important ones is, what is your patient's perception? And I think that sometimes gets lost because I feel like a lot of you guys out there come in the back door, maybe park in the back of the building, come in, put the lab coat on or the scrubs and get busy seeing patients and providing patient care. And I don't know if you really understand what your patient's perception of your practice is. Coming through the front door, what are they seeing? Are they seeing, stains on your carpet or, chipped laminate or stains on the ceiling tile? Or are they seeing a bunch of messy magazines all over countertops or coffee tables? What are they really seeing in your practice? And what is that perception that they have as a new patient, perhaps, or maybe somebody that's been in your practice for many years? What is it saying about your dentistry? Perception has become a huge piece of why I think customers, patients, and anybody else, consumers, patronize a place of business. And especially with COVID, they're demanding more than ever a clean and efficient space, especially when it comes to healthcare. And if your space isn't meeting those needs, your patient's perception might not say the best things about your practice, because before they get to know you, all they have is your waiting room and what they've experienced in the parking lot on the way in. But I get it. There's got to be a balance. You can't build a Taj Mahal and have your patient sitting there going, gosh, am I paying for Dr. Jones's beautiful new office? But at the same time, it's got to be clean and efficient, because that perception is everything. The other thing we see a lot of is team cohesiveness. When's the last time you asked your teammates, your staff, your hygienist, your assistant, your office manager, your front desk folks, how they feel about your practice? Is it efficient? Is it ergonomic? Does it flow well? Do they have enough room in the treatment rooms to provide awesome patient care like they'd like to? Is the sterilization area efficiently laid out so they can process instruments quickly and efficiently in your practice? Is your lab area large enough? Do they have a break room to break, or lockers to put their stuff in? Is there a washer and dryer to wash their scrubs, or whatever it might be? We all know how hard it is to find good teammates these days. And we all know losing a teammate could be a really big deal. So keeping folks happy within your own team is also a reason that I think many doctors consider renewing their practice, expanding or remodeling, or perhaps even moving. The other thing is a patient experience. And I think that's different than the patient perception. The experience is the actual feeling they get throughout the entire patient visit. And I think companies like Starbucks and Netflix, and even how you buy your groceries these days, have really set the tone for what type of experience that consumers, patients, and you expect when you, again, are patronizing a place of business. And what is their experience when they call your office? Are they able to get in quickly? Is there weeks, if not months, of delay because you don't have enough treatment rooms to maybe serve your patient base properly? Perhaps the emergencies can't get in quickly. Not sure, but that's another reason that people expand quite a bit or would go down this route, is they don't have enough chairs to treat emergencies in a timely fashion. Or, perhaps, you would like to do specialty procedures in your practice, maybe endodontics or airway, or maybe even some surgery, and there's just really no room to do it. So your patients have to be referred out or wait even longer. And lastly, guys, and something that I come in contact with a lot now is kind of a transition. What are you doing the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of your practice life? Are you thinking about perhaps selling your practice or bringing in an associate? Does your current facility facilitate those types of opportunities? And if it doesn't, that's a great reason or a why to start thinking about perhaps doing one of these things. And so as we move on to the next slide, Renee, there's plenty of pain that I hear about all the time. Lots of pain. It doesn't all have to do with the facility, by the way. Doctors have a very tough job. Dentists have a very tough job. Dealing with patients and teammates is a challenge. There's a lot of competition and there's a lot of pain out there. But when we're specifically talking about the facility, I always hear kind of the same things. My patients can't find me. There's not a lot of good street signage. I'm not in a retail space. I'm in a medical office building and no one can really find where I am. And when they do find my building, sometimes it's not clear how to get to my office, or they go to another doctor's office instead of mine. And there's some confusion, again, leading back to the experience of the patient. You got to ask yourself, how do you get new patients? Is it all marketing? Or is it referrals? Or, is it Google reviews? Or is it drive-bys? But either way, you have to be visible and you have to be in a place where you can compete with your colleagues these days, because there's that much competition out there. So again, one thing that I always go back to too, because I know you guys and gals so well, is, are you happy? Are you happy where you're currently working? You know, you guys are spending so much time in your facility and in your practice. Are you excited to get up in the morning and drive to work and do dentistry? Does your facility excite you? Are you happy to get there? And if not, it's another reason to consider possibly refreshing your practice. I have seen time and time again that just even a small refresh or remodel will totally reinvigorate the team and the dentist, and that is contagious. Patients feel that excitement, and I've seen practices grow simply by painting the space because people are excited about a change. And your patients are cheering for you, by the way. Many of them don't think they're paying for it. They're excited that you're successful, and they're excited they're going to a successful dentist, and they want to see the changes and the opportunity for them to have a better experience too. So once we've gotten through all of that, Renee, one more slide, please. We got to figure out what you need to consider. And the two main consideration topics that we all go through when we're doing this is, hey, am I moving or am I staying? And if you're moving, you're likely not an owner, meaning you don't own the condo or the building, because no one normally leaves a building that they own most of the time. They're going to stay there and try to expand or remodel, or maybe even do a secondary satellite practice. So you're probably leasing if you're thinking about moving. And that's a great conversation to have with your local equipment specialist and other teammates in the area of what are the benefits of owning a space, whether it be a condo, a building, or building a building. Is that something you want to consider? But the first question is, when is your lease up? If you're thinking about moving, you've got to know when your current lease is up, because most landlords that I know will not let you out of your lease, especially if you're leaving one of their buildings. So it's really not an option. But when you know when your lease is up, that gives us time to work backwards and really come up with a great plan for that transition, which would be moving to a great space, whether, again, be it building one, buying a building, or buying a condo. You have to know what the market is offering. You have to know exactly what the lease rates are. If you're planning on leasing another space with perhaps a building with better visibility, better amenities, and so on, you really want to know what your options are. So you have to get out there and start doing the research, and your local Henry Schein equipment specialist and team can really help you with that. The other thing that we also bring up quite a bit is if you've got practice debt, current practice debt, lots of times now with interest rates as low as they are, you can refinance that debt, spread out the term a little bit, borrow some more money to help offset this project cost, and still have a lower monthly payment that you do now, increasing cash flows. So moving is definitely a great option. We do many moves a year, and we can help you with that with the design studio. Now, if that's not an option for you and you want to stay, there's really only three options in your current, if you're going to stay where you are. One is just a simple refresh. And refreshing is just like I talked about, maybe doing some new paint, some new flooring, some new tile, maybe replacing those old stained ceiling tiles, and really just giving that thing or just some lipstick or a whole refresh. And that's usually pretty affordable and really quick. And many times it changes the whole perception of your patients and your team. It's really exciting, and it can work and be very affordable. So you might want to think about that if it's something that simple. However, if you've got bigger goals than that, and the goals are deeper, for example, you need an extra treatment room. You want to enhance your sterilization area to be more efficient. You want to grow your lab into a wet and a digital lab. Perhaps your break room doesn't really accommodate, your team, and or they don't have any place to put their things. Maybe there's purses and phones and bags all over your office, and there's really no place to put those. Those are larger goals, and we would consider that a little larger remodel. And many times those do require permits and a little more planning. But I find that most designs, especially older designs, are inefficient. And within your current footprint, not taking any more space, many times with the help of my friends at Integrated Design Studio, Renee and her colleagues, we can redesign that space to make most of those goals happen. Now, we only have so much square footage, so sometimes there will be a compromise somewhere. Perhaps we lose a consult room to gain a treatment room. But if that's the goal that we determine up front, that's what we should be heading for. So remodels are also a very viable option. And many times you can go to your current landlord, renegotiate the lease, maybe extend that term even early to get some tenant improvement allowance dollars back to help offset some of those construction costs. That happens often. Landlords want to retain you, especially in this day and age. So they're willing to work with you to keep you there for an extra set of years, and perhaps even pay for some of your construction through tenant improvement allowance to help you stay and get it done. So something to consider. Now, if you're lucky enough to be in a building where you've got an adjacent space or a space across the hall that we can expand into, perhaps, again, build in efficiencies with the new plan, maybe add a couple new treatment rooms, increase the break room size, maybe even add some more office space or whatever it is you're looking to accomplish. That's a fantastic option as well. Does require a permit and some really intense, I say intense, but really careful planning so that we can phase the project well enough so that you're not down even a day and that your patients aren't disrupted too much. It's called a phased remodel plan, where we're trying to do things and keep you in business as much as we can without really disrupting your patient flow. And these happen all the time. So those are what the options are. And now the question is, Renee, if we can go one more, what do we do about it? How do we make the decision? And I think really it all comes down all the time with my clients to cost. What is the cost of the project? Whether it be relocating the project, expanding the project, remodeling the project, refreshing the project, whatever it might be, what is the cost? Your local equipment guy or gal can help you determine the total project cost. And that can be weighed against the opportunity cost, which means, what does it cost me if I do nothing? If I do nothing and I can't get my patients in and I can't see emergencies and I keep the shag carpet for a while and I'm doing fine and it feels fine, what's the cost of that versus the cost of expanding or refreshing your project? Honestly, that's the biggest question. And really, what's your long-term play, doctor? It goes back to that question. Do you want to rent? Do you want to own? Where are you going? Your equipment team and the folks at Henry Schein can help you phase it out where we can eliminate as much stress as possible throughout this project. Believe me, there will be stress. But when you partner with folks who've done this many, many times, you'll find that a lot of the stress is taken off your shoulders and there is a plan in place to really realize every one of your goals. And so I think, Renee, it's back to you for some solutions.
That's right. And I think before we dive into that, Adam, you had some poll questions that we wanted to ask our audience. So we want to just take a minute or two, if everyone can maybe review the polls, give us some ideas of where everyone's at, or what some of your concerns are, or preventing you from maybe remodeling or expanding your space. I think that'd be awesome.
Am I reading these, Renee? So I think everybody can see them. Yeah, I think everybody can see the poll questions. We'd love your responses, guys. I mean, so if there is something preventing you from starting, from starting a practice, what is that? What is driving you guys to update your practice? I think we went over a lot of the reasons that I think people do. And maybe when was the last time your practice was updated? Sometimes we're in a space that we've updated once, but just like anything else that trends, I think there's a timeline on design and a refresh, just like your home. And your practice is no different. So we'd love to hear from you. Please answer those questions if you can.
Awesome. I'm going to leave it up for a little longer, but feel free to keep moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. So Mike reviewed, the need or the why. We talked about different considerations to think about. So let's dive into some solutions. So like I mentioned earlier, our team works with Henry Schein equipment specialists all throughout the country, just like Mike. And often, Mike will meet with the doctor. They will send Mike, our equipment rep would send us a plan. And we kind of go through a process on our team of analyzing an existing space. As Mike mentioned previously, there's a lot of things to think about. Obviously the simple refresh where you're just updating finishes, not changing anything architecturally is really easy and simple to do. However, when you are considering a remodel or an expansion, there is a process involved with permitting and architectural drawings. So what our team likes to do is we like to analyze the existing space that comes to us. So first and foremost, we want to identify any outdated features and assess how to update them. We also like to evaluate the current existing ADA conditions as well as universal accessibility. Mike mentioned earlier, assessing the flow and function of your space. If you're planning on adding 4 new operatories to a practice that already has currently 4, you now have a total of 8 treatment rooms. How is that going to impact all your other support areas, such as your sterilization, your lab? Is your business office going to be large enough to accommodate that many more patients that those working in the business office are going to be checking out or checking in? Again, the staff lounge, with adding 4 more operatories, are you going to be increasing the amount of staff members you'll be having? Do you need to bring on an associate? Do you have an area for the associate to work? So there's a lot of different ergonomics and flow that we really like to dive deep into. Another thing we like to think about is equipment. So obviously in your new treatment rooms, you're going to be most likely outfitting them with new equipment, but you may take a look back at your existing treatment rooms and realize, wow, the equipment in these rooms has not been changed out since 1995. So if that is something that you're looking to update as well, we need to kind of review the existing treatment room sizes, the various clearances to ensure that the new dental equipment that you want to put in your existing treatment rooms will fit. Lastly is imaging. We work on a lot of practices that were built in the early 80s. They didn't allocate space for 3D imaging or they have a dark room still. So is that something you're looking to incorporate into your space? And is there an existing space like a dark room that we can utilize to fit a 3D imaging system? So we're going to also be reviewing a couple case studies. One is of an expansion and a remodel that will kind of give you guys an idea of how Integrated Design Studio would work with an equipment rep, and also kind of how we also analyze a space and provide solutions for that space. But before we really jump into our case studies, I just want to give a brief education on ADA accessibility and universal design. So I'm sure you've heard these terms in the past, but ADA accessibility stands for the American Disability Act that prohibits any discrimination against those with physical or mental impairments that might limit activity. So how that relates in the building world is there are several key areas of a space that is required to have certain clearances and minimum code sizes for those rooms. So those areas would be your vestibule, airlock entry if you have one, restrooms, and restrooms are a really big one, especially with working on a remodeling project as well as an expansion. Hallways is another one. We have minimum sizes that those hallways can be. The treatment space, and that's more so entering into a treatment, so the clearance to get access into that room. And then also the business office, incorporating a low ADA counter, which would be a low 36-inch counter. So someone who was in a wheelchair could easily access that desk. In addition to ADA, our team likes to implement universal design. And universal design is not a building code. It's not a requirement. However, and it does go above and beyond the ADA requirements, but it's really designing a good space for all. And when we say good design for all, it's really thinking of any person who may be walking into that space, and will this space function properly for them? So we try to include all different types of individuals, from those with mobile or dexterity limitations to developmental, intellectual, and limitations, and really trying to create a space or an environment that's comfortable for anyone walking through there, as well as the caregivers, parents who might be joining them as well. So I'm going to pass it back over to Mike briefly, and he's going to kind of give an opportunity analysis of our first case study that we're going to be reviewing.
Thanks, Renee. So this is, I think, where Henry Schein's a little different, guys and gals out there. It's easy to sell equipment. I sell equipment for a living. That's no problem. If you're looking for cheap equipment, I'm sure you can find something on the internet. That's not really what I do for a living. What I do for a living is this. I manage projects, and I come out when you call me, and I'm there for you as part of your project team to help you with these types of questions. And this first one, if we're going to expand a space, how do you know? How do you know? Do I have enough square footage to meet my goals? Am I going to be able to combine the two spaces in such a way that it looks natural and like it's been there the whole way? Is it going to be disjointed? Are my patients and my team going to be disrupted forever? What does it cost? These are questions that a lot of my clients have, and this is what I do for a living. You call me up, I come out to your space and I come out and walk the opportunity you have. In this case, there's an adjacent space next door. We would walk this space together. We would look at whatever's there. If it was an existing chiropractor office or eye office or whatever it was, we would just walk through it. If it was a blank, what we call gray shell, we'd walk through that space and we'd see the square footage and kind of what the power requirements there were, how we can connect it, what makes good sense. If we need to measure it and there's no AutoCAD file available for me or rolled set of documents, meaning blueprints, I'll measure the space for you and make sure that Renee and her team have a good set of plans so that we come back to you in just a few days, Doc, with a plan that makes sense. Meaning we're trying our very best to hit all your goals. And in this case, the goals were add 7 ops, recovery room, remodeled business office, waiting room, so on. We want to make sure that if you're going to go through the stress and expense of expanding or remodeling, relocating your practice, that we're hearing your goals and we're giving you a deliverable and a plan that looks great that you can modify. By the way, a lot of our first plans that we come up with, they're good, but they might not meet exactly what you were thinking. And the cool thing about it is the dialogue that we can have as a team back and forth about, hey, I love this. This is great, but hey, let's change this. This can happen on the fly now once we get this plan kind of cooked up in AutoCAD with our team at Integrated Design. And so your equipment specialist is a lot more than a guy or gal that can sell you an ADEC chair, okay? We can do a lot to help you make sure that the project is viable and it's something worth investing in. And that's what we're really here for, to help you along the way. And so once we get those dimensions over to Renee and her team, magic happens. And I'm going to pass it back to Renee so she can kind of go through this particular case study and show you how that magic really happens.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And it is magic. It truly is. I will say, I'm going to pat myself on the back. So with this scenario, obviously we have our existing space over on the left, which is 3 existing treatment rooms. We have a consultation room. We have a business office. We also have various private offices, staff lounge, and again, a dark room. So Mike and I, or another equipment rep, would kind of analyze the existing conditions of the space. First and foremost, my biggest question is, how are these 2 spaces going to unite? Because obviously we have an existing demising wall that is separating the current existing left dental clinic from whatever this other practice was on the right. So again, how are we going to merge these spaces and make it feel natural, as Mike mentioned? When we look at kind of the current flow of the existing business office, if we kept that existing business office intact, there would be no way possible that staff members would not be necessarily walking through that new waiting room. So one thing we really want to keep in mind whenever designing a space is having separation of public, clinical, and private spaces. So just looking at this initially, we're going to have to do some rework to ensure our zones are all in the proper locations. But one thing to know with this existing business office is, again, it was currently only serving 3 operatories, but now with adding 7, we're looking at a total of 10. So whether the doctor's goal in this space was to keep that existing business office or not, our recommendation would be it's probably way too small to serve the amount of patients that are going to be coming through the doors. Another thing we would assess is the location of the existing sterilization room. Again, we're adding 7 new operatories to the right. So how is the flow going to be taking dirty or clean instruments from those new 7 operatories and back to the existing sterilization? Are they open to relocating that existing sterilization, or are they open to the idea of maybe incorporating a new sterilization area that would serve those new 7 operatories? We also have an existing dark room, and I feel like I'm hitting a hammer on the head or a nail on the head, but again, this is not something that we're incorporating in new spaces. So it would be a question I would definitely ask is, how can we reallocate that space to be utilized for something else? And lastly, this office has a lot of existing restrooms. We have a total of 6. And unfortunately, none of them are meeting current ADA and IBC code. So with this amount of square footage we have, the recommendation would be actually a total of 3 ADA restrooms. So no matter what we do here, we're going to have to be bringing up some of these restrooms to code. Doesn't mean that we need to bring all 6 up to code, but we'll definitely have to keep that in mind, as well as the existing vestibule. So we're required to have a 5-foot turning radius when entering into that existing vestibule. So that's definitely something we're going to have to address right off the bat with any design we put together. So let's see what we put together. So this is our proposed layout. So it looks quite a bit different, but some things are still intact. So kind of to take a deeper look into what we did, I think it's important to kind of, again, walk through that front door from the patient's perception. So off the bat, we upgraded the existing vestibule to be ADA compliant. So we have that 5-foot turning radius into the room, into that airlock. When the patient walks through the front door for the first time, they are now greeted by a receptionist smiling at them, ready to check them in. And we've relocated that entire business office now to be kind of in that center core. With that being said, we also were able to kind of rework the waiting room. And we also incorporated some patient amenities in the space as well. So we have varied seating options from on the right. We have some areas where you could plug in. We also have your standard seating over to the left, as well as a beverage station. So to us, this made the most sense to kind of regroup the waiting area a little bit lower down and centralize that business office. In the business office, we also incorporated 2 separate check-in counters. Again, being that this office is so large with 10 operatories and that it is split, we felt that it made the most sense to have 2 people working at checkout to serve both the left and the right. You'll also notice on this floor plan that 2 of our existing restrooms that were located on the upper or top of the plan were brought up to code. So by doing so, I believe the previous plan had a dedicated men's restroom and a dedicated women's restroom. Typically, we like to steer away from that and just provide unisex ADA restrooms. This will actually limit you with the amount of restrooms you'll be required to have. So for every 2 men's rooms, you need 2 women's restrooms. So by updating these 2 existing restrooms to be ADA and unisex, we're able to actually reduce the amount of restrooms needed in the space. And lastly, the big goal, or not lastly, but the major goal of this was obviously adding on additional square footage to add 7 more operatories. So we definitely were able to achieve that. And as I mentioned before, we had an existing sterilization center that really was pretty far away from where these new operatories were going to be. So we proposed, instead of relocating the existing sterilization, we decided to incorporate a new sterilization to serve those 7 operatories. We also incorporated or added the 4 recovery rooms, a nurse station that has a patient exit right off of it, as well as nitrous tank storage. Now, moving out of the clinical zone and into the private zone, we did do quite a bit of work in this area as well. So number 1, we added a door that separated the clinical from the private zone. We were able to update one of the existing ADA restrooms, or one of the restrooms that was not ADA to ADA, to serve the staff. We were also able to incorporate an associate's office, as well as a larger team staff lounge area that incorporates lockers and bulk storage. So all in all, I think this was a pretty good solution for their project. So Mike.
Thanks, Renee. That was awesome. And obviously, an oral surgeon's office, or somebody that was incorporating a lot of surgery into their practice. But that example basically can go from any specialty or any general practice. It's about having the opportunity to expand. And sometimes you have that opportunity and you're really lucky, and there it is. And you should grab that opportunity when it comes up. And sometimes you don't. And that's why it's great to have some of these options where you can remodel, refresh, or even relocate, depending on your situation. And in some cases, and I think I mentioned it before, it might make sense just to do a second practice. If you're doing that well and you love your space this much, sometimes you find some space in another zip code, perhaps, or somewhere nearby that you can dump your systems back in and recreate what you've got working where you are. So a lot of options. In this particular case scenario, it's a remodel. And the same thing I was talking about before holds true. That's why it's so important to build relationships, I think, locally with your Henry Schein equipment specialists and their team, because we can walk your current space and identify inefficiencies and opportunities to, again, remodel that practice so that you can gain most of the goals that you want to accomplish without actually taking on any more square footage. And it's the same process. You go in, we talk about your goals, what you want to add, what's working great, what's working not so great, what you want to change. Hopefully there's a CAD file. Sometimes there's not. Maybe you have some blueprints. Sometimes there's not. And we start making a lot of notes on what you want to accomplish. And that's when I send that stuff to Renee and her team. And they go and take a look at, again, what we've discussed and come up with the best solution to accomplish most of your goals. And so the analysis at the beginning, again, no cost to you, really will dictate the rest of the project profile. Are you moving forward? What path are you going down? Is the cost right? Does it make sense? Is this space even viable? Can we do this? And again, it all starts really locally with your team. Renee?
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So again, with this remodel, we're really just looking to incorporate one treatment room. However, there are a couple things that we would definitely point out or we would notice when we do our plan analysis. So first and foremost, the existing business office has a sliding window. Now, this was really popular years back. However, dental and waiting room design has really moved forward to being more open, creating that transparency. Again, that slider kind of gives the illusion that you're kind of trying to hide something or maybe not as welcoming and friendly. So that's definitely something I would recommend removing. They also have a giant business office. So one of the questions I'd be asking is, have they moved away from paper files? If they have, if they've gone more digital with their filing, we could definitely look at reutilizing the space somehow differently. And again, our good old ADA check. So though it looks to be to code, unfortunately, it is not. So we'll definitely want to look at updating that vestibule to get our 5-foot turning radius in there, as well as our restroom. So taking a look at the remodeled space. So we did do quite a bit. And again, walking in through those front doors. So we do have a new ADA vestibule. So we have our 5-foot turning radius in there. We also brought our patient restroom up to code as well. This took a little bit of room out of the waiting room square footage, but I think we were able to offer some new patient amenities that made up for it, like the beverage station, a fireplace. So we incorporated a lot of interest in that space, even though we took out about a foot or two. Since that business office was so large, we actually decided to divide the space into two by providing space for an actual business manager's office with a door. So a nice area for someone to go in, make phone calls, do paperwork, and still be accessible to anyone working in that front desk. We also added a transaction counter at the front desk and removed that sliding window. Now, to add our new operatory in there, we had to do some reworking of that business office. So this isn't as traditional as you would typically see. However, I think it works really, really well for the space. So we actually took that checkout station out of that central business office and actually put it off into the center core of all the operatories. They still have easy access to that business office if they need to go in there. But this was really our way to be able to accommodate that new operatory. So all in all, again, I think it turned out really nicely. So as Mike said, our team does a really amazing job and we do work magic, but we don't always get it right the first time. So, a lot of times there are some changes and revisions we need to make to the floor plan. But once we have a finalized floor plan that you're happy with, it's been solidified, it's really important to then kind of think beyond the floor plan. And Mike kind of mentioned some of these points earlier, but really to kind of assess what your current interior design, what your material finishes, what your furniture, your artwork, are saying about your practice. You can have the best flow and function, the best ergonomics of your space, all of the high-tech equipment, but if your space feels outdated, that is really all your patients are going to see. You want to have a space that's going to really reflect the level of care that you're providing to your patients. A couple things to consider when going through a refresh or remodel, especially when talking about interior design, is kind of also taking a look at your demographic. You might have started your practice in the late 90s, early 2000s. You might have been a family dentist and you saw a ton of young kids. However, that kids table has not been touched in a decade. You now are getting more into cosmetic dentistry, maybe it be teeth whitening, and your demographic is now between the ages of 30 to 50. So, really kind of taking a look to see who is your patient base and who do you need to cater to. So again, interior pain points. This again is a really big topic, and it is so important to imagine yourself as that patient walking through your front door for the first time. What do you see? As you walk in through that front door as a patient, or really any patron that walks into any space, a restaurant, a hotel, what are you seeing? Because within the first 5 minutes, you have developed a perception of that space you're walking into. So taking a moment and being that patient yourself walking into your practice, what are you noticing? Do you see soiled carpeting? When you go up to that business office, is your transaction counter chipped or worn? When you sit in your waiting room furniture, is the upholstery starting to rip? Are the chairs comfortable? Do your arms have scratches in them? Again, is that business office disorganized, messy? Are there files everywhere? Is your waiting room messy? So these are all really important things to assess. So you've got your floor plan done, you've done your assessment, you know what your pain points are. What do you do next? Where do you start? We're all active users probably on Pinterest, and we see all the trends, and it is really cool to incorporate some of the newest and greatest trends. But your space doesn't need to feel trendy. What it needs to feel is warm, welcoming, and inviting. I would say the biggest shift in the dental market, probably in the last decade, is getting away from a super clinical feel to having something that feels more residential or more hospitality based. Going to the dentist and coming from a patient myself, you can have a lot of anxiety. So when you walk into a space that's warm, welcoming, reminds you of home, or reminds you of something, there's some cool design elements that remind you of something other than getting your cavity filled, can really help alleviate a lot of that patient anxiety. It's also really important to decide what style represents your space and your target demographic. And if you're unsure of what your style should be for your practice, I would really recommend going to successful businesses in your area, be it coffee shops, restaurants, salons, and figure out what are they showing? What is showing in these really well-to-do practices? Are these ideas that I could implement into my space? If you're really kind of unsure of what direction to take. So that's definitely something we would recommend. And then next is creating a color palette. And that can be a really daunting feat too, because you can have a really distinct personal style and taste. But again, we want to appeal to the masses, right? Yes, we want you to be happy in your space. We want your staff to be happy in your space, but we also need our patients to be happy in the space as well. So creating a fresh color palette that, again, is inviting for all that are going to be utilizing your practice. And so one thing you could definitely do is just focus on your neutrals. Neutrals are great because you can adapt them to different things you're looking to implement. You can bring in color through artwork, decor, furniture, and it really allows you to plan for the future. So over on the far right just shows kind of, again, some of those neutral colors from our cool tones to our warm tones and how they can kind of do a gradation. So let's say you really like that cool spectrum, but you notice it's trending a little bit more warm now. There's easy ways you can implement, those cool and warm tones together so that you're staying with the times. So one of the biggest questions we get asked on any project that we are doing a refresh or remodel expansion is, what areas do I need to focus on updating my finishes? So some of the largest high impact areas are going to be any areas that are patient centric. They don't know that you've expanded your sterilization by 4 feet. They don't know that your team now has lockers. They don't know that you've added an associate office. But what they do know is that you've updated that waiting room and reception. Again, that's the first 5 minutes when your patients are going to walk through that space. That is when they're going to gather their impression of your practice. Patient restroom, though it's small, it might not be one of the top things on your list. If you have a gorgeous waiting room and reception area and your patients go towards the clinical area to use the restroom and there's cracked tiles, it's dingy, scuffed paint, it's not going to feel cohesive. Consultation, again, if you have a consultation, this is a great area to spruce up. It's where a lot of those larger treatment planning is happening, as well as a lot of those financial conversations. So again, having that space reflect your level of care. And lastly, your hallways and your treatment area. The hallways are really critical because, again, this is where a lot of that heightened anxiety is going to happen from the minute the hygienist or assistant calls the patient from the waiting room and they start making their trek to that treatment room. So incorporating interesting things for the patient to look at, to feel, to see in the space is really critical. And then also your treatment area. Again, the key word is cohesiveness. We want things to flow. We don't want to have this gorgeous updated waiting room, and then the minute that door opens and they go back to clinical, there's a disconnect. So really keeping that patient-centric. So how do you select your material finishes? So a couple of recommendations that we like to make is, or really the first question we like to ask is, are you keeping your existing dental equipment? If you're keeping your existing dental equipment, the casework, the dental chair, we probably would like to work with what you currently have. Maybe you just updated that 4 or 5 years ago and it's in great working condition. So we want to create a color palette and select material finishes that are going to coordinate really well with your existing treatment room. If you're not planning on updating maybe now, but you want to plan to update in a year or two, let's plan for the future. Let's look at different manufacturers. Let's look at different chair finishes, cabinetry finishes, and create, again, a cohesive design that ties it all together. Your biggest impact with finishes is really going to come down to your flooring and any type of wall finish. So over on the right is actually a project I just finished in spring. This was a doctor out of Utah, and he had been in this space, I believe, for over 20 years. And, 20 years ago, the very traditional design style was really popular, but he had noticed that the building he is practicing out of went through a facelift. They went really modern, really clean. A lot of the surrounding suites surrounding him were kind of going that direction. And he just felt that the space felt very, very heavy and dated. So we didn't make any architectural changes to this practice at all. We didn't move a single wall. However, we incorporated new flooring, new paint, new furniture, new artwork, and it really just transformed his space. It made it into something completely different. So again, just looking at the flooring and the wall finishes, I think can really speak volumes to its impact. So let's talk about some material finishes. So this can be really daunting if you're not working with a designer. And there's a lot of products out there. One thing I will recommend with any dental project that we work on is we only specify commercial grade materials. The reason for that, and you might walk into your local Home Depot and Lowe's and see a flooring that you really, really love, and it's a good price, but it's not going to have the warranties. It's not going to be able to handle the foot traffic. Your stool, the assistant stool, the hygienist stool running back and forth. And in a couple of years, you're going to be ripping all of it out and replacing it. So always stick with commercial grade product. It might be a little bit more expensive on the front end, but you're guaranteed to have a minimum usually of a 10-year warranty. So one of the biggest products on the market right now is luxury vinyl tile, or LVT. It is the offspring of sheet vinyl, and I'm sure we're probably all familiar with sheet vinyl. We probably have lived in a home or an apartment that had it at one time. And it was a great product. It was super durable. However, the problem with sheet vinyl was if an area got damaged, there was really no way to repair it other than rip it up. So luxury vinyl tile came on the market, and the beauty of this product is they're individual pieces. So if a piece becomes damaged beyond repair, it's a simple fix to change out. And it has come a long, long way till it first got in the market. There's an array of different styles, from stone looks, woods, abstracts, and they've gotten really creative with adding different texture. I actually have luxury vinyl, commercial grade luxury vinyl tile in my home, and I have a lot of people that come to my house and put their hands on my floor because they think I'm lying when I say it's not real wood. So it's definitely come a really long way in the market, and is probably popular flooring.
Renee,
Practice.
I think you might be breaking up.
Moving on is, oh, yep, I'm back.
Good. Okay.
Am I there?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, guys. Not sure where I left off. So if we have some questions, I can definitely answer them later on. But moving away from luxury vinyl tile, we also have carpet. This is still a really popular solution in the dental office environment. We typically would specify a carpet tile just like a luxury vinyl tile because it's easy to replace a damaged or soiled piece. And carpet has come a really long way or carpet tile has come a really long way since it first came on the market as well. There's a ton of different options, from textural, geometric, more organic patterns. And we typically specify these in the waiting room, business office, consultation, private offices, and patient hallways. So we're all familiar with paint, obviously, and paint is really going to be your most inexpensive option for updating your wall finish. However, there are a lot of really cool products on the market that can really be a value add to your space. One thing to note with a remodel or an expansion is, let's say your practice was done in the early 90s. You've gone ahead and you've added a few layers of paint on those existing walls, and now you have brand new drywall in your new operatories. It's more than likely the texture on your existing walls and the new texture on your new walls are not going to match up. So wall covering can be a really great solution to hide anything that is damaged on the wall or needs to be covered. It also can add a lot of design interest, bring in additional color and texture. And again, there are a ton of different products ton of different looks on the market, from really abstract to oversized plaid to textural to more of a natural look. So it's a really great solution to add in as an accent wall in your treatment rooms or waiting room, logo wall, or to even wrap down your hallways for areas that are high impact. Another really cool product on the market nowadays that we specify a lot are dimensional wall products. So these are all from a company called MDC, and they are all very interesting and very cool products. Starting over on the left, we have MDC Zintra panels. These are actually an acoustical panel. So as the world has gone more open, dental office design has gone more open, we need to incorporate items that are going to absorb sound. And so these are really cool products that can be installed vertically, horizontally. They come in an array of different colors, wood looks. So skies are really the limit with that. We also, moving towards the right, we have a product called Zintra Sticks. One style that's really popular right now is the use of wood slat walls. I'm sure you have seen them in bars and restaurants and hotels, and they add a really interesting architectural solution. So this company actually came out with an acoustical product that resembles the wood slats, but is not wood. So again, bleach cleanable, really great product, and can add a lot of design interest into your space. The next two images are NDC dimension walls. So similar to this, actually was a product that was derived from wall protection panels that we would see in a hospital corridor. So it's a high impact product. So it can take a lot of abuse from carts, from kids, from you name it, that are going to run and crash into your walls. They come in a ton of different styles. They are easy to apply. You simply just put it up with liquid nails and you're done. Come in a ton of different dimension or different patterns and colors. So we specify all these products a lot. The dimension wall product is one that we specify a ton for front faces of reception desks, especially because they can take on a curve. So a lot of really cool options for wall finishes. And lastly, probably one of the very popular wall treatment that we're seeing a lot right now is wainscoting. Wainscoting is definitely back. It's a really easy investment into your space, be it adding wainscoting to the front face of a desk or wrapping it on the hallway side of your treatment rooms. It can add a lot of architectural interest. You can play around with different colors to paint it, different styles of wainscoting. So it's a really great solution, especially, for an existing space to help spruce up. So moving away from material finishes, I just want to touch briefly on furniture because, again, that waiting room is where all of your patient perception is going to start. So furniture is definitely a big component of your waiting room space. And the furniture arrangement can have a huge impact, and especially coming from a world of COVID now, where a lot of our doctors have removed chairs or you have curbside waiting. It's definitely a good time to think about what else can I do to this space to make it interesting and to make people feel like they have options. So one of the big recommendations we make is actually taking all those chairs and move them off the wall. As I mentioned earlier, people don't want to feel like they're sitting in a clinical space. They want to feel like they're sitting in a residential home or, a hotel lobby or a salon or spa. So, thinking about taking those chairs off the walls and making more pockets of seating. Again, creating different spaces to give guests more privacy is really critical, and incorporating different kinds of seating. So, Starbucks was really one of the first to implement a lot of different varied seatings, from high top to booth to standard chairs, and people kind of have that expectation now. So incorporating high top seating, standard guest chairs, and love seats. Furniture is a really great way to incorporate a lot of interest, be it with different fabrics of different colors and textures. There's a lot of great amenities you can add into furniture as well, such as integrated power plugs. We're all on our devices. We all need a minute. We get 15 minutes to charge up our phones. It's awesome. And if new furniture isn't really something within your budget, you can always look at reupholstering existing waiting room furniture. A couple of things to think about though is, again, analyze the style of your pieces. Are they dated? If you have wood armchairs, are those in good condition? I think a lot of times people think it's a cheaper solution or less expensive solution, but you have to factor in fabric costs, the cost of someone having to reupholster, and then also the process of moving all those existing pieces out, delivering them to whoever is going to be reupholstering, and then bringing them back in. So just some things to kind of think about if that is an option you're looking to explore. And Mike is going to wrap us up with execution.
Well, thanks, Renee. That was awesome information. I think very valuable as well. I think the finishes and the perception and experience all really relates now to that look and feel that I think people expect. And we can do that. But the key to this, and thanks for hanging in there, everybody on the call, the key to all of this is, okay, we get it. We want to do something. We know my practice is dated. We know we want to expand. We know we need to serve our patients' needs better. We need no more treatment rooms. Now what? How do we execute? Well, you need to build a team around you. That's for darn sure. And I can tell you that it doesn't all happen with the equipment person like myself. First and foremost, financing it. How much is it going to cost is a great question. But then once you have an idea of a general budget, maybe a soft budget, we need to go find a lender if you're not going to pay for it in cash. And what's really great right now is money's still relatively cheap. And lenders think you're a great investment. They always have, and they always will. And so getting approved for an expansion loan or a remodel loan or, even a relocation loan is fairly easy still for most of my clients, and something you should probably do right up front, because your negotiating power is always better when you're already pre-approved, when you're negotiating with landlords, or if you're buying a space, or if you're looking at land, or if you're just going to remodel the space you're in. It's always nice to know what you can afford and what you're approved in. So finding that lender that you're comfortable with, perhaps refinancing some of that practice debt into a new note as well, is something to really consider and start with. Almost as critical, or maybe even more, is finding a healthcare real estate professional. And the reason why is most landlords, whether you've known them for years and they've gone to your daughter's wedding and so on, aren't really your friends per se. They have a business to run, and they're in it for themselves and their business. And to be able to be represented on the other side with someone who really knows the business and what concessions are being offered in a comparable situation down the road from you will help you get the best deal in either renegotiating your lease, getting TI dollars, again, tenant improvement allowance to help you offset your construction costs, or even free rent. Free rent will more than pay for your move. As I said, I think earlier, it's an easy way to extrapolate concessions from landlords, either in your current space or somewhere else. You've got to have someone representing your best interests. When we do a larger scale project, anything that's going to require moving a wall, plumbing, or electrical, most of the time, a permit's going to be required. And when a permit's required, we're going to have to have an architectural stamp on a set of plans. So as good as Renee and her team are as putting the plan together, we're still going to need to involve a local architect to stamp that plan to make sure that it meets all local and state municipality codes and guidelines, including the national ADA codes and things that Renee went through earlier. So having an architect on the team, and if you don't know any, your equipment person can help you build out this team. They know them all. They know the good ones. They know the ones that aren't so good. They know the ones that know your budget, maybe know your style, also can execute on this plan for you. Contractors, hugely important. Also, very important to the project, and having somebody that has some experience with dental. In my opinion, I think dental experienced contractors do a much better job because they understand what you do. They understand what a 12 o'clock cabinet is, or what a patient chair is, or where your x-rays are supposed to go. Even though we've specified it perfectly on the plans, it's nice to have a contractor on board that can help you because they've done dental before. Dentistry is a little harder than your medical brethren and colleagues. Most medical offices, you plug in a table and you have a computer in the exam room, you're good to go. You guys have plumbing like you're building a house for, with 20 kitchens in it. It takes a little time. Locations are important. Line sizing is important. And having a contractor that understands that is huge. Also, technology has gotten just light years ahead of where it was when I started. I've seen the evolution, and it's been awesome. And it's going even faster now. And I think having plans for a tech lab as opposed to the old plaster labs, and incorporating technology, new TVs, new computers, servers, cloud-based options is important, along with providing the entertainment. So your IT professional or your Henry Schein dental technology specialist will need to be involved in this project more than likely as well. So it's a team of people that help you accomplish your goals. And we can help you put that team together. The bottom line, I think, in wrapping all this up is kind of where you see yourself a year from now, where you see yourself 5 years from now. What kind of practice do you want to drive to every day? What kind of practice do you want your patients to drive to every day? Once you make that decision, we're here to help every step of the way. Thanks, Renee.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. That's it for tonight, you guys. So I don't know, Adam, if we have answers to the poll questions, if we have any questions that we could address. We do have our contact information to reach out to Integrated Design Studio. And I know, Mike, I think you wanted to share your contact information as well in case someone wanted to get in touch. Let's see.
I put it out there on the chat. So I think my email and phone number, my personal cell phone and my email is in the chat, guys. You can absolutely 100% reach out to me. Even if you're not in Colorado, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to give you some idea of construction costs. I'm happy to give you some idea of any questions you have. There was a question I saw in the chat. Renee, maybe because this wasn't my project. I think they're asking about the expansion, that oral surgery expansion. Mm-hmm. How much total square footage? And what was the cost for the expansion?
I would have to double check the total cost of square footage, but I know it's under 5,000 square feet. So I can definitely follow back up with that as well. I know we probably will send out an email with follow-up questions, but I do believe it was under 5,000 square feet. The total cost of construction, I'm not positive of what that was.
Well,
You know,
and if I can jump in there, that's such a crazy question. What's the cost of construction? That varies from city to city, state to state, and even sometimes county to county. Construction costs in Seattle are approximately $220 a square foot right now, where costs in Colorado are about $185 a square foot. I've got friends in Dallas, they're lower than Colorado. They're probably, hovering around 125, maybe a little more a square feet. So it's very regional on what your construction costs and your architectural costs will be. And that's why, again, I kind of drive you back to meeting with your equipment person in person and really helping them understand what your total plan is, so they can really fill in some of these blanks budgetarily for you.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the poll questions I think we got is the reason why doctors haven't started this process yet is disturbing patients or staff. So I think, I think we can all speak to projects we've been a part of, Mike, that it is a disruption to staff. It is not going to be pretty every single day. But I do think from the patient side of things that they get really excited about it. They are happy to see these changes being made.
Yeah.
So you have
and the staff is excited too. I get it, but I know there becomes a frustration. If anybody's ever remodeled their kitchen, there's a time where you want people out of your house. You're ready to have your kitchen back or part of your house, and you're like, hey, these people are at my house every day. This is not great. My kids or whatever are disrupted. And I get it, but there is a sense of excitement to really making your workplace better. And if it's carefully planned out with a phasing plan that really makes sense, so the disruption is at its minimum. A lot of work can be done also in the evenings and weekends, depending on your building and some of the general conditions, construction conditions your building already has set in place that we can help you find out. The disruption is actually less than you think, and it actually goes quite quicker than you think. Many people think it's a year or so that this is going to take. Not the case. Many projects are done between 6 and 12 weeks total, depending on how big they are. Many that aren't ground up projects are done very quickly, and small refreshes can be done as easy as 2 or 3 or 4 weekends, depending on the scope of the work. So at the end of the day, I think, again, if you sit down with somebody who's done this a few times and really elaborate on what your goals are, a plan can be put in place to keep everybody fairly happy. Like I said before, there's going to be stress, but if we set expectations and manage stress throughout, I believe the outcome far outweighs the process. And that's always what I think at the end. I've never had a doctor come to me and said, man, I wish I wouldn't have updated that shag carpet. I wish I still had that Dairy Queen window. I wish I didn't have that extra op. I wish I didn't spend that money. Matter of fact, they say, I wish I would have built it bigger. I wish I would have done it grander. If I could do it again, I would do it like this. And we have these answers because many of the folks in my position have been a part of many, many projects, and we learn on every one. There's no such thing as a perfect project, but we get closer every time.
Awesome. Adam, did we have any other questions?
No, I don't think we do.
Okay.
Well,
great job, guys.
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for spending your evening with Mike and I. We greatly appreciate it.
Awesome. And like Renee said, if anyone has additional questions, feel free to reach out to the Integrated Design Studio team via the many opportunities shown on your screen. We did record tonight's webinar, so that'll be available within 1 week of today. And that's it. So thanks for attending, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.